Hi, I'm Ailey for Design Break, and today I'm going to show you a process to find the perfect name for your new brand. Okay, so this is actually an update to a video I did a few months ago. That video is quite long and it goes into a lot of detail on the process and the steps, so I'll link that down below if you want to check that out. This is kind of more of an overview and an update because I've made a workbook to work through these steps much more easily. But if you want some more background on that, go and watch my first video. Okay, so my creative process for naming a brand kind of pivots around three main steps. The first one is groundwork, where you're kind of setting the scene and getting into the right mindset and thinking of the personality of your brand, just so you can sort of understand where you want to go with the name. The second step is putting together a word bank. So you're going to go through some categories that you can use to generate just a huge library of words that relate to your brand that you can then use to generate ideas and start putting together some potential names. And the third step is working out which name is best for your brand from all of your ideas that you've come up with, and then checking if it's actually available, so if you can actually use it. Before we start the brand naming exercises, there's always three rules that I try to keep in mind that are really good to stick by. I go into more detail on these in my other video, but I'll just give you an overview just now. So the first rule is it needs to be appropriate. So basically the name has to match the personality of the brand. So if it's a corporate brand, you probably want to reflect that. You don't want to be super zany and weird with your name. You want to kind of keep it appropriate to your brand. The second rule is it has to be easy. So that means it needs to be easy to pronounce, easy to spell, easy to remember, and easy to read. And the third rule is that it needs to be available. So you don't want to go through the whole process of finding that name that you're really excited about and you think it's the perfect name, and then you sort of build out the brand and get the logo designed and things like that and invest a lot of time and money into it to then find that the name is already taken, it's not available, the social media handles are used, there's no domains that relate to it, and there's already another company operating with that name that means you just can't use it. So we'll go through all of those different checks at the end. Okay, so with those rules in mind, I'm just going to do a really quick run through of the brand naming workbook that you can download and work through yourself. And this video is just kind of going to be an introduction and just a quick overview of what it is so you know what to expect when you're working through it. So to start with, we just overview the rules and the steps just so you know what to expect. Step one is the groundwork that I mentioned. So you're kind of just going to look at different companies in your area or in your field, or even just companies that you like, and list them down just so you've got some background knowledge there. The next step in groundwork is just thinking of your brand as a person and trying to generate some adjectives to describe the personality of your brand. So it's quite useful to think of your brand as a person, because then you can start thinking about the brand as its own personality and sort of separate that from yourself. Next, you want to think about your ideal customer or fan. This is just to have that in mind, just so you know who you're appealing to, so you can kind of make that connection work out if you're building the brand personality and name that your ideal audience is actually going to associate with. Okay, and the last step in that groundwork stage is writing a brand personality statement. So this can be quite simple, or you can expand on it as much as you feel comfortable with. But this is kind of just to summarize your brand's personality and all the steps that you just went through, and kind of define that in something that you can go back to throughout the process and make sure you're sticking to that, your initial vision. Obviously, brands evolve and change and they're organic, so this might change over time, but it's good to have that as a reference point to go back to. Okay, so that's the first step out of the way, and then next we can go into building the word bank. So we start off with thinking about categories. So if you imagine it as a table, you'll end up with the categories all along the top. I think we go through 5 or 6 categories, and then afterwards I'll ask you to generate just a big bunch of names down below each category, so that you'll then end up with a big spread of words that you can then use to start putting together potential names and stuff. So the first category we look at is people in mythology and history. So this is So these can be fictional or factual characters or people. So maybe there's someone super prominent in your industry that was maybe a big part of its history that not many people know about, or maybe there's some relation to Greek mythology, like the example I put in the workbook. Or maybe it's just your name. Maybe you're doing a personal brand. So kind of just start to list a few relevant people for this bit. The next category is thinking about the audience and market. So you want to kind of think about the specific traits that make you stand out, and make your customers pick you over other people. Category 3 and 4 are thinking about the service or value that you're providing your audience. So you've got your primary offering and your secondary offering. So, for example, a design agency, their primary theme would be design, creativity, those kind of words. And then the secondary offering is something that's maybe a bit less obvious. So maybe it's a design agency who focuses on design, but super high quality design. So the secondary offering would be words relating around the high quality aspect of it. So like beautiful, bespoke, that kind of thing. So now that you've defined some categories for your word bank, you can go straight in and start building the word bank. So I've actually given you an example here of how I normally set it up, and I've set up an Excel spreadsheet as well that has categories and examples already in there that you can use alongside this workbook, or you can just write it straight into the workbook, or you can just set up your own Word document or however you prefer to work. So before you start actually building up your word bank, I've got an extra page that has some extra name components that you might want to add into your word bank to use for when you're generating your words. So that these are like grouping words that you might want to, if you're building a community or that kind of brand, that it might be good to incorporate them into it. Or we've got prefixes or suffixes in there as well that you can add on to the start or the end of your brand just to give it a bit of a more unique spin. Okay, so once you've built up your word bank, just start combining different words from different columns together, obviously in a logical way, to try and start generating some ideas. At this point, you don't want to be super precious about each and every name that you come up with. You kind of just want to rattle off as many names you can think of. Even if it sounds silly at first, that one name that you think is silly might lead you down a route that leads you to the perfect name. So kind of just rattle off as many names as you can, and try and get creative with it. So once you've got your list of about 100 names, you want to shortlist the top 10 to 20. At this point, you probably want to start getting other people involved, ask them what they think, what their initial impressions are of it, just to confirm that your shortlist is not just full of weirdness. So once you've got your shortlist, we're looking at the first two rules that I mentioned at the start of the video, just checking if it ticks those boxes. If it doesn't, then probably don't go ahead with that name, but you might, if you really, really like it, maybe just look at how you've structured that name, and maybe you can tweak it a little bit to use the same sort of formula, but be different and still manage to tick those boxes. Once you've ruled out the names from your short list that don't fit the first two rules, you'll probably have a slightly shorter list to go through the availability checks. So I go into more detail in the document, just showing you how to check the register, the ideal domains and social media handles. So you can just take a note of which ones are available and which ones aren't. Okay, and that's it. So hopefully by the end of that whole workbook, you'll have the perfect brand name, or you at least have some ideas to get started with. I've noted down some next steps that you might want to do once you've got the brand name nailed down. You probably want to engage with a designer, start talking about branding, and this brand book filled out is probably a good resource to give to your designer, to give them some ideas of the personality and feel that you envision for your brand, and give them a good thing to work off of. You probably want to register your domain and go ahead and set up the social media accounts. And once you've got the branding process started, you probably want to start thinking about getting a website built as well. Okay, so that's my creative process for naming your brand. Hopefully it was helpful. You can download the workbook at dunclyde.com/resources. I'll put the link down below, and the link for the Excel spreadsheet with the template word bank will be there as well. But yeah, hopefully it was helpful. And if you did manage to generate a brand name from my process, I'd really love to hear what you came up with. If you could let me know, that'd be great. But yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye.